Hello again. You're not going to see much of me in this because I've got my pan here that I want you to see. This is Patty Parker. Hope you're having a good day. In the last video I showed you how to make a good pastry pie crust, and if you have that done and you've baked it, you're ready to make the filling. And I'm going to show you how to make homemade pudding to put into your pie shell. It is absolutely silly to go buy pudding mix to make a pie because it's ingredients you have right in your cabinet. It's not like it's some magic formula. But I did call this my mom's magic cream pie recipe because with this one recipe you can do a few substitutions and make everything from vanilla cream to chocolate cream to banana cream, coconut cream, butterscotch. You can make a cream pie filling and put fruit on top of it. It's a very good recipe, and if your kids are just hungry for some pudding and you're not even wanting to make a crust, it makes great pudding just to eat out of a bowl. So let's get started. I will go ahead and give you the recipe now so you can screenshot it, and that way you'll have it in case I forget at the end. This is her recipe. Make a screenshot of it and then you'll know how to do the whole thing. Okay, and I'll try to remember to do that at the end as well. All it calls for is sugar, cornstarch, salt, eggs, milk, and butter. And you have all that stuff in your cabinet, so it's silly to go buy it when you have it in your cabinets. It calls for 3/4 of a cup of sugar, and it calls for 3 tablespoons of cornstarch, and as you can see, I'm not being extremely careful about leveling it off and everything because really truly it'll be good anyway. It calls for just a pinch of salt. I just put a little bit in my hand and throw it in. Then it calls for eggs. And before I do that though, I'm going to take my wire whisk, and this is a cool whisk. I love this. It's got a little ball on the inside of it. I'm going to take my little wire whisk and just try to incorporate all that cornstarch and sugar together, because later on when I add the eggs and the milk, it tends to sometimes look like it's going to make lumps, but if you have your wire whisk handy, you can just whisk those lumps away if there are some. Okay, I need two cups of milk, and I've used whole milk, and I've used 1% and 2%. It doesn't seem to matter, but it calls for 2 cups of milk, a little bit less butter fat in it this way, but that's okay. Then it calls for only egg yolks. So I'm going to save my egg whites because I like to make homemade angel foods. Maybe I'll teach you how to do that one day. Angel food cakes are so easy to make. And if you like meringue on top of your pies, you can use the egg whites for the meringues too. I think my recipe calls for 12 egg whites. But anyway, I'm going to put the whites in here because for this particular pie, I'm going to show you how to make meringue and whipped cream. And you can decide which one you want on your pie. I don't know if you've ever broken eggs. I don't know who I'm talking to. Probably people that know how to cook better than I do. But just crack it on the edge a little bit. Try to cut the shell in 2 pieces. And then catch the yolk in 1/2 and just kind of balance it back and forth until you get all of the egg white out. If you're going to make, got a little piece of shell in there. If you're going to make meringue or angel food cake though, you need to be sure and not get any yolk in the whites. Be careful about that. Okay. You can beat that up ahead of time, but you really don't have to because you're going to beat it in here anyway. See how I'm just incorporating that to where I don't see egg yolks anymore, and where hopefully most of the cornstarch and the flour is incorporated with each other. Okay, what did I do with my rubber spatula? Seems like no matter how organized you try to be, you don't always have all the equipment you need right at the tips of your fingers. I'm going to turn this on medium-high heat. You don't want to put it on too high because there's sugar in it and it will stick. So I'm just going to put it on. This is one of my bigger burners. By the way, I love gas stoves because you can see the flame and you know what you're doing. But if you have an electric stove, they work fine too. I lived for years with electric stoves, but I do like gas better. Now I'm going to just stir this constantly. And I want to, as I'm stirring it, make sure that I'm touching every single spot of the bottom of the pan. Because if you accidentally skip a spot, it'll burn. And burned pudding isn't good. So anyway, I'm just going to stir it, and I'm not going to keep the camera on the whole time I'm stirring it. It'll take maybe 5-10 minutes for it to thicken, and you stop when it gets bubbly, and I'll show you in a minute what that looks like. Right now you can see it's just runny, milky, but in a minute I'll show you what it looks like when it's ready when it's cooked. So I'll turn this off for a minute. Okay, I'm going to turn the video back on because it's beginning to get thicker. And it looks like it's going to be lumpy, but it's not. That's the process it goes through while it's thickening. So you just stir it. If you're afraid it's getting lumpy, you can use your whisk. But the problem is you need to be sure that you keep the bottom stirred so it doesn't burn. And it will start bubbling all over. Around the edges at first and then all over. And if you look, it's just instantly turned into pudding. It's kind of interesting how that works. Anyway, then if you wanted just a vanilla cream pie, this is what you would do. This is it. This is a vanilla cream pie. I'm going to put some vanilla and butter in it. Let's go ahead and do that while we're thinking about it. And the recipe says 2 to 3 tablespoons of butter. And I'm kind of like Paula Deen. A little butter's good, but a lot of butter's better. So, which explains why I have a weight problem probably. Anyway, I use about 3 probably. And then it calls for vanilla. You can use imitation vanilla. This happens to be pure vanilla, but I don't always do that because it's kind of expensive. But it calls for a teaspoon of vanilla, and since this is real vanilla, it ought to be plenty. So you just mix that in, and that's a vanilla cream pie. You do that at the end because it thickens better if it doesn't already have the butter in it, and the vanilla doesn't evaporate quite as badly as it would if you were cooking it with it in there. Now, today, I do love vanilla cream pie, just plain old vanilla pudding. I love it. But today, I'm going to get this butter melted. Need to do that first. And then, we're going to make it coconut cream. You just get flaked coconut. You can buy it in a can. You can buy it in a bag. Honestly, Baker's is more expensive, but just any old brand of coconut tastes right to me. And the recipe calls for, I think, 3/4 of a cup. Let me look. I'm going to give you a page of variations too. Yeah, it calls for 3/4 of a cup of coconut, but honestly, I just get a handful. It doesn't, just, if you like a lot of coconut, put more. If you like just a little touch of coconut, put less. But just stir that coconut in there, and it looks like this when you, and then you just pour it in your shell. This is a shell that I baked earlier. The other one's still in the oven, the one I showed you how to make. And just spread it out and let it cool. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to make meringue, and then I'll show you how to make whipped cream probably later. But while it won't hurt to put hot meringue, fresh meringue on a hot pie, it won't hurt it at all. It does hurt to put whipped cream on a hot pie because it will just melt and turn back into liquid cream. So you take your egg whites that we separated earlier. You know, we use the yolks in the pudding. Well, figure out. Use the yolks in the pudding, and then you use the whites in the meringue. And it calls for cream of tartar. Cream of tartar just makes it more stable. And I should have had that out because I don't know where it's at. I'm going to turn you off while I find my cream of tartar. If you're like me, you have a million cans of spices and ingredients in your pantry, in your cabinet. Okay, it calls for 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar. Not very much, but it will just make the meringue fluffier and nicer. It calls for granulated sugar. Most of the time I use that. I used to use that, but now I've found that if you use powdered sugar, it stabilizes it even more. So I will get out some powdered sugar. This is going to be noisy. So for a while, I'm going to beat it until it makes stiff peaks with just the cream of tartar and the egg whites. And I'm going to shut the video off for a minute because it's just noisy and it'll take a little bit. This is what it starts looking like. See how it's getting fluffy? It's not quite there, but that's what it's beginning to look like. When it gets to looking like this, see how fluffy it is? Then you can go ahead and add your powdered sugar. Some of you probably have moms that used granulated sugar, and granulated sugar works too. I've just found that it stabilizes it better. I'm putting 1/2 cup of powdered sugar in there. Clean my spatula off a little bit. And as you do this, it will start to get real glossy looking. Going to scrape the sides just a little bit. And one last little mix. And when you get done, it should look like this. See how it's real fluffy and holds peaks easily? Okay, I'm gonna see if I can get this figured out to where I can show you how to put it on the pie. There we go. Just pile it on the pie. I've been in restaurants where the meringue was taller than the pie, and I never did quite understand that, but I am not a big meringue person. I prefer whipped cream. And sometime in a future video I will show you how to make whipped cream. I thought I would today, but this is running longer than I thought it would. And I'm kind of new at this, so we're playing by ear here. I'm just spreading it out to the edge. I kind of try to touch the crust. It seems like that kind of maybe keeps it from shrinking. I don't know if you've ever seen meringue that has kind of shrunk away from the edges of the pie. So have it kind of touch and then kind of smooth it out. And then actually I take the back of a spoon and make peaks, just to make it pretty. It doesn't make it taste any better, but a lot of eating is the eye. I'm going to put it back in my 400-degree oven and watch it constantly for just a little while, and it will just take a minute for it to brown. Just a minute. Okay, it probably was no more than 3-4 minutes, and it's this brown. If I weren't doing this video, I probably would go ahead and turn off the oven and leave it in the oven until the oven cooled down a little bit. That seems to kind of bake the egg whites through a little bit better. But it's done enough to eat right now. I thought I would review the recipe just for a minute with you, just in case you didn't get it right. You can screenshot it again, shoot it again. I don't know what that word is. I'm gonna have to ask my kids. It's 3/4 of a cup of sugar. This is for an 8-inch pie. And when I make a 10-inch pie, I double this recipe. 3/4 of a cup of sugar, 3 tablespoons of cornstarch, a pinch of salt, 2 eggs, separated yolks and whites, 2 cups of milk, teaspoon of vanilla, 2 to 3 tablespoons of butter. And in this case, we did the coconut cream variation, and we put about 3/4 of a cup of coconut in it. But you mix in the saucepan, you mix the dry ingredients, the cornstarch and the sugar. And then you add 2 egg yolks, not the whites, and the milk, and stir it up real good. Then you stir it on medium heat with a whisk until it's all thickened. It takes just a few minutes, and while you're doing that, stir the bottom of it so it won't stick. And you remove it from the heat and you add the butter and the vanilla, and it makes an 8-inch pie. We also, the variations, this is why I call it the magic pie. The variations, you can make chocolate pie by simply adding 3 tablespoons of cocoa to the dry ingredients. So you'd put 3 tablespoons of cocoa, 3 tablespoons of cornstarch, and the 3/4 of a cup of sugar. If you want a coconut pie, you did it like we did today and just make the vanilla cream pudding, and then at the end, when you add the vanilla and the butter, you go ahead and add your coconut. If you want a butterscotch pie, you can substitute brown sugar for the white sugar, and voila, you have a butterscotch pie. It's amazing and it's delicious. If you want a banana cream pie, you make it like we did today. Make the vanilla pudding and then let it cool completely before you put it in the shell. Cool it completely. And after it's cool, put half of that pudding in the bottom of your baked pie shell and slice 1 or 2 bananas, depending on how much you like bananas, over that half of the pudding. And then over the top of that, put the last half of the pudding and spread it out. And on that pie, you can make it with meringue like we did today, or you can make real whipped cream. And I'm going to show you how to make real whipped cream in another video. If you want a fruit cream pie, you just make that vanilla cream pudding and then get a can of cherry pie filling or blueberry pie filling. They have blackberry, they have, oh goodness, strawberry, I know, all kinds of puddings. And you just spread that on top of your vanilla pudding that's already in the baked shell. And you have a fruit cream pie, which is really delicious. Mom used to do that a lot too. So it's not as hard as you'd think, and there it is. And I hope you make a pie tonight. Talk to you later.